27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
22 seconds. 19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12. 11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
What?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3.
2.
1.
Welcome to the Subspace Chatter, where we boldly discuss Star Trek. Today we'll be discussing this week's episode of Lower Decks, called Room for Growth. Joining me today are a panel of other co-hosts. Can you please introduce yourselves for our viewers?
My name is Vanessa, and I host a channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
And my name is Scott, and I'm the host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
My name's Dan. I'm the editor of the website Warp Factor Trek. So the first question is, there seem to be two things mentioned in the cold open of this Lower Decks episode that never get mentioned again. One was increased staff causing overcrowding, and two was being in the middle of the action. Like, what happened there? I think that was you that asked that, Vanessa.
It made the cold open sort of disconnected from the rest, except for the engineers' sort of fatigue with the constant possession of the captain. So I was baffled. I didn't understand. Sometimes, like, Lower Decks does the thing where they do a trope and then they talk about how self-aware they are of that trope.
Right.
They didn't do that this time. They didn't break the fourth wall to go, hey, we know that this writing isn't logical. So I was confused by that.
Yeah, and you notice, like, through the rest of the episode, the parts that take place on the Cerritos, they're all, like, in the innards of the ship. So you don't see any of the overcrowding that they're talking about. So, yeah, it really is kind of like they just did. Just kind of, like, almost like they forgot about it. Because kind of later, like, at the end, does their bar, whatever they call it, like, are they just calling all the bars 10 forward? Because I'm going to run with that.
I don't think they had a name for their bar.
Yeah, well, it makes it hard to describe. But at the end, I don't think it seemed overcrowded. Like, they had a place to sit. It didn't seem like there were too many people around.
Yeah. So why didn't Captain Freeman consult with the engineers as to what would be relaxing now?
It does seem a little odd that they were burnt out on work, and then when they're trying to relax, they're just doing more work. And that they all had that idea as, like, a unit. Like, everybody, you know, is relaxing the best by still working.
But I don't remember. They're still working before they work on the machine that, like, de-stresses.
Yeah, they were dealing with, like, disassembling all the weird temple stuff from on the Cerritos, like the things that manifested as a result of Freeman's possession, where she manifested the temple. I mean, it's masks all the way. I mean, a much more visually stunning representation of it, because to me that episode was really boring.
Mm-hmm.
But so they made it a slightly more exciting version of masks because it's a cartoon, and they were disassembling it, and you could see them, like, becoming stressed out. So it was clear that they needed something else to do besides take care of crisis after crisis. And I thought it was, like, a nice sort of nod to the fact that if you have a long time where it's just thing after thing after thing, it does wear on people. Mm-hmm. But she didn't think to, like, ask them what they would need. And what they would need is, like I mentioned to Dan before, like, my dad's an engineer. They engineer things to relax too, but it's not like a force thing. You know, they love to be able to solve problems, but
Okay.
But it's not. But, like, just being under the wire, being, like, constantly put under pressure to do it. It was the pressure that was stressing them out. It wasn't the engineering itself. So, really like, and it, as it turned out, it was really Freeman that needed the vacation more than anybody.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And,
So
I,
sorry. So engineers
talking
gonna
about
engineer.
yeah, and also like, she was sort of like assuming that they would need that type of relaxation as much as she might at that point. She was just sort of accompanying them, like, oh, I'm the captain, I'm gonna set an example kind of thing. But
Mhm.
you know, she didn't like take the second to like reflect and think, you know, maybe I'm projecting my need for relaxation onto these people and assuming that they want the exact same thing. What do you think, Dan?
well, I was thinking about when you said it's basically very much like masks, and I was thinking, well, at least I was glad that they actually referenced masks, just specifically in saying it's like the Darcy Archive collection or whatever. Because I think like if it was like a new, if it's changed the ship into being like a temple area or whatever, and but it was like a new species that they found or something like that, I think like maybe fans would be like, well, you're ripping off masks. So I'm glad, yeah, it was directly connected to.
I wish they did it more, like they referenced it more, like they had the moon guy too.
Mhm.
And like Branson would be the moon and try to like do that weird role playing thing that they do at the end. Like that would be good.
I thought it would have been good if they built more in the world building that masks basically established. So, yeah, it would be a real continuation of that sort of mythology. Yeah, they just didn't go there.
Yeah. At the end of that episode, though, did the engineers on the Enterprise have to put the Enterprise back to normal? Is that there's just something they cooked up for this, so they had an excuse for the engineers to be overworked?
They didn't show that part.
Yeah,
They
so.
once the Sun Lady
Mala.
Masaka once that person was excised out of Data, the temple stuff just sort of disappeared.
Yeah, I thought so.
So Masuki seems quite a sort of similar name. I think that's what's referenced in this Lower Decks episode.
Mm-hmm.
And well, also like I did think, well, obviously it's directly connected to masks, but also like I thought, well, mask is like part of a sort of continuation. It seems like like you had the Next Generation's Genesis, and I think even Emergence. If I remember correctly, that there's quite a few episodes that are like changing the ship into like something else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess like this Lower Decks episode is indirectly like part of that trope pattern of tropes or whatever. How fitting do you think the episode's title is, Room for Growth? And what meaning or interpretations do you find in it?
I think it means that there's room for change. That they clear, like at least Tendi is trying to sort of reach for something a little more ambitious. And then you hear Mariner sort of make a comment where she says, I'm going to end up getting drummed out of Starfleet, and Tyler is going to end up dead being bold. So, it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if like there's room to grow. I think it's pretty literal. Honestly, it's sort of a comment on the Lower Decks people.
I mean, yeah, part of their whole.
I'm saying, would you agree, Scott?
Yeah, I think so. You get sort of like the main plots literally revolving around, trying to find new rooms. So part of it is literal. But I think you could definitely say at this point there's still room for growth from the characters. You know, like you're saying, Mariner's realizing that she thinks her Starfleet crew is going to get nowhere. She's probably going to get drummed out, which is odd because like 2 seasons ago, I think it was is like in Crisis Point, which she's self or analyzing herself on the holodeck. She's talking about all she needs to do is be a good officer, and it's like she didn't take her own advice. And then it's growing as a person after that, trying to work with her mother, and that didn't work out. And then she's growing personally because apparently she's now in a relationship with Jen. Boimler, he's clearly got some growth there because he's bold Boimler now, but he's really got to learn that there's some times when you don't say yes to everything. And I'm still excited to see what Tendy's going to be doing as a science officer, even as underused as it was even in the last episode where it was a plot point. And yeah, Rutherford definitely needs someone to actually relax. Like the way at the end of the episode he came back from that spa even angry. Like somehow he was even more stressed.
And I guess Captain Freeman as well gave her like the growth of, well, maybe she should relax more.
Yeah.
Like once. Yeah, I just thought it was pretty cool that it could mean either like character growth, like you both said, or like you said, Scott, could mean like talking about rooms on the ship and how like a subplot is that they're trying to find a computer console to work out who can get the 4 rooms, and then it turns out there's only 1 room. So yeah, rooms on the ship are quite sort of quite important in the story. Mariner mentions the Maquis, but the last we knew of them, they were actually destroyed. So do you think they've had a revival since Deep Space Nine and Voyager? And if they have come back, was it that they went on the ground to find a different cause to champion? What do you think?
I thought it was like a sort of term that you would use synonymous with something like Benedict Arnold, or just somebody that just sort of is a turncoat. I thought that was sort of a sort of like in Star Trek world ism. Not necessarily saying that the Maquis still exists, but it's just a shorthanded way of saying this person is falling short of expectations or is not Federation, like not following the rules, which is a weird thing for Mariner to say about somebody else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like really, but the thing is, like, I don't think the show, like, the characterization of Mariner sort of shifted from the last episode to this one. She's a little less chaotic, which somehow gives the character leverage to make that kind of criticism. But it's like, I guess we're supposed to just forget everything that has happened so far in the season, the stealing of the starship,
right.
and just not following orders and whatever. So now she can get on her high horse and call somebody else a Maquis. And it was just a strange comment for her to make.
Yeah, I hate how far behind I am still on Voyager, but I mean, it's entirely possible that there's been a revival. I mean, obviously you see the Maquis crew fusing with the Voyager crew, but that's just one. That was just like one ship, and undoubtedly, I would bet anything there's probably a section or a small group of them still surviving somewhere in the Badlands. Maybe taking lessons from, the Bajoran freedom fighters who finally, won their independence from Cardassia. As far as a different cause, I don't know what that would be at this point. I know this is post-Dominion Wars. Like, is there really anything else major going on in the quadrant?
Well, the Packlids and Klingons and stuff have been active, I guess, but like
That's true.
Like you're saying, it's like quite small stuff in comparison. I just remember like DS9, Blaze of Glory with the last episode with Eddington in it, and like them being obliterated by the Dominion, basically. Like I love the McKee, but also like I did think like the way that Madner refers to them just by saying like other officers, oh, they should just join the McKee, like NASA said, like it could just be like taken as a figure of speech, a colloquialism. Did anyone else find the like Adosian guru character like Taz? She was like really concerned about the turbolifts aboard the Dove. It seemed like. Does anyone find that quite odd?
Maybe it's like a place where, yeah, that was kind of like a beat that wasn't really explained. Maybe it's like a place where they don't receive data about someone's stress level and they need to just keep an eye on that all the time. Yeah, it would have been cool to have her like expand on that. It was just kind of a weird comment because I thought when you wrote that, I thought you were talking about the turbo lift logs that the Delta shift mentioned. And it seemed pretty clear what their concern was, but like the lady in the Dove being concerned about turbo lifts, I can't imagine what was on her mind.
Well, it's the line she says, when she sees like the machines the engineering team builds basically to de-stress people, especially like Captain Freeman, who's totally stressed out for that point. But she's like, oh no, you've like converted like, or she either says like you've converted the turbo lift into the machine, or what have you done, something like that.
Yeah, because they broke it. They must have broken it in order to make this machine.
Yeah, but also, she says, if you put one of these on every ship, it would make the Dove obsolete because it basically does their job a lot quicker. So yeah, I think she'd be really worried about the idea of how easy it is to engineer a turbo lift into a stress relaxing machine. Especially, it's like eject that thing off the ship.
I mean, it would just from a marketing perspective, if she found a way to mass produce those things, like that would make her job so much easier because they wouldn't have to clean up after puppies, kittens, and rabbits anymore. They wouldn't have to like worry about a Klingon stabbing somebody anymore.
Or
like
just
in his room throwing knives. They're like, we're not gonna interrupt him. We're just gonna let him keep doing that.
He's gonna be scared to tell him to stop.
They wouldn't have to clean up all the Tellarite mud baths.
Oh, right.
Or maybe they don't have the chest worm people baths or whatever.
Oh,
I thought maybe, and in the futures and visions of Star Trek, maybe like there's no way to like patent that device, so like anyone could do it, and she doesn't want like other people to find out. Like it's so easy to create one of those de-stressing devices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think is the funniest part of this particular episode?
Okay, I had two moments in particular where I unexpectedly cackled out loud. Okay, the first one was in engineering when Captain Freeman's talking to Billups and telling him he needs to relax, and he goes off on Shax and slaps him across the face, and then he collapses on him. It's okay, let it out. And then he reaches up and weakly slaps his face again. That was so funny. Like, I don't know if I was overtired or what, but I cackled out loud. It's a good thing I was watching it by myself. And then later on, when there's going through the holodeck to get to the entrance, and Shax and Ta'ana are arguing. I'm not taking your spot, am I, Vanessa? No. Is it when they're arguing and he calls her Diane, and Boimler's like, "Is that her sex name?" Oh man. Okay.
I thought the fact that they called it crime play, like it's a specific kink, that cracked me up. Also, the sort of compulsively engineering as like a thing you just cannot help but do.
Mhm.
Like that there's like that comic of the woman eating soup and she's like knitting because she's a grandma and she can't help it, like she's knitting the noodles together. It was like that, like, oh, I just was here for 5 minutes and I managed to make another thing, not because I necessarily even wanted to, but because I just can't help it, kind of thing. And like the cucumbers under the bracelets, like it's just so ridiculous. Like, come on.
Right. Whatever tweets your freak, pal.
There's a particular scene where they're like, who would ever what was it? Who would ever join Starfleet to concentrate on gardening? And then it changes the image of Shaq. She's like concentrating on gardening. I thought it was so funny.
Oh yeah. Oh, nice.
So, how many rank pips out of 5 would you give this episode?
Actually, one question first that I forgot I wasn't able to add.
Sure.
So are they gearing towards more of an adult audience? Because like in the past 3 episodes, okay, we've had Tendi in a towel. You can't even see my fingers. Tendi in a towel, Jen the Andorian in a bikini, and in this one, both Tendi and Mariner had to strip down to their underwear to save Boimler. Kind of seems like I remember the first episode had mature rating, and that's why I didn't want my kids to watch this show. But after that, it seemed to tone down, and now it just seems to be ramping back up.
Yeah, I mean, they had the sex scene last seson.
Oh my gosh, yes. How could I forget Excretus? How do you ever forget that? Someone tell me.
And it was so quick, it was so fast. I've never really seen Lower Decks as a kid's show. I think it's more of an Adult Swim type of thing.
Oh yeah.
Like After Hours Cartoon Network type of thing. Not all, yeah. I think this isn't a criticism of you, Scott, but I think a lot of folks think that animated equals kids show, and that has not been the case for most of time.
I usually think Prodigy is more a kids show. And Tavona in the comments says that it's like a show for adult sort of thing. Like, I presume this is for mature audiences in general. Star Trek has been a sex positive. So.
This is true.
Yeah. I mean, Berman Trek aside, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You say Berman Trek aside, but yeah, I didn't think it was completely sex positive when there were some episodes of the original series where the alternate Kirk basically rapes Janice Rand.
Correct.
Yep.
Right about that.
Yeah.
I just think the vast majority of TOS doesn't go down the same roads as Berman Trek does in terms of that. But yes, that episode, Miri, when Kirk hits on a minor, not the vibe.
And even as people have said, the episode Plato's Stepchildren is so well known for apparently including the first interracial kiss. Well, it wasn't, but then even then, it's a kiss that's done under duress from the.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody's being forced to do things. It's not willingly. And right before that kiss, they're both apologizing to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a pleasant thing at all.
Yeah, I did hear something along those lines. Somebody was talking about, what's the episode? A Requiem for Methuselah. Where it's right at the end, Spock mind melds with Kirk and takes away his memory of what's his face's wife that he fell in love with. And he was speculating is that's something that they did often, almost every time, Kirk was falling in love with his love interest of the week was, Spock removing his memory of it, and we just didn't see it.
Yeah, but Tavana has correctly pointed out that it's very open heterosexual attraction implications. That's right, because people being gay on Star Trek, especially I mean, all up until Discovery has just been sort of winking and nodding and innuendo, especially with like Garrick, and I'm glad that's not no longer a thing.
Okay, so also like you said, like during Burma Track, yeah, as you were saying, like it wasn't so open or whatever. But like I was thinking about Enterprise and like Phlox with his multiple partners. I thought like
Right.
there's openness about like multiple partners that was
Right.
again included in that was what was actually featured in season 2 of Lower Decks, where they're all having like an orgy and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was really interesting that, we're not going to have homosexual relationships or other types of relationships or anything like that, but we will talk about polyamory. That is an interesting sideways direction. But it's interesting that everybody on Phlox's planet is straight. That's really interesting.
That's true.
Do you think in this Lower Decks episode, like Boimler is like too responsible for wrapping up the story? Because I know it well. Watching it, I noticed like he like is the one, because they're focusing on like bold Boimler and stuff like that. And
Yep.
Do you think he's too involved or not?
Too involved.
Yes, Tavon is referring to, of course, 7 of 9. Makes a lot of sense. I agree.
Yeah. How do you mean by too involved? Like, was he like he was the one who like kept finding the path through the ship, or
Yeah, at the end, yeah.
he got into trouble with the deflector? Or... It was kind of Boimler centric, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It sort of like was interesting to see a little bit of a change, because Boimler was sort of like the leader, and Mariner was almost uncomfortable with how he was leading, because he was making decisions very, very similar to the way she does, which is like, I'm going to forge ahead, not think about it too hard, and that freaks her out. And it's like, what would be really good writing is if they would say, if Mariner was like, oh, now I see how reckless I am, maybe I should stop, or think about things a little bit.
Or maybe she should be proud of like her influence rubbing off on him.
Right, like helping him come out of his shell. Yeah.
That's right. She's supposed to be his Chuck Beach.
Yeah, Scott.
I just be honest. Yeah, I don't know if I noticed it now, but in retrospect, yeah, it was fairly Boimler centric. It was a little different that he was leading. I almost think Mariner might have deferred to him up to a point, because he's the rank and file Starfleet guy, so he's going to know the layout of the ship. And even though he said all the retrofits, I don't know. I could have sworn it was like only the once, but or did they do something different after they put all the outer hull back on? Like, were they working around on the inside too? Yeah, so you expect him to know the way, but in specific situations like that, yeah, you would kind of expect Mariner to take charge a little more. So that was a little different. I'll give you that, yeah.
And there was there was a consequence. I will give it to the show. There was actually a consequence to some carelessness. When the deflector was turned on, and the thing started spinning, and it's like, well, now we're almost going to die because we're jumping around somewhere we're not supposed to. And granted, it was sort of like, okay, we're going to make a rope out of our clothes. All right, we're going to see them not as clothed, but that was a consequence of carelessness.
Right. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to ask another question, but if you have more to add to that. So.
Not exactly. It just occurred to me. It was like this totally random thought. Like, do you think Boimler calling himself Anti-Grav Boy was like kind of giving himself a superhero name is just a really subtle nod to the fact that Jack Quaid is also on The Boys, even if he doesn't play a superhero.
I never really considered that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it literally just hit me. So
I actually thought that scene reminded me of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they go to eat their fizzy whipping drinks and go up that wind tunnel and almost get sliced and diced into pieces. And I mean, they don't have like Willy Wonka yelling at them about that in the end.
right?
That would have been too perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be like, you do not get these rooms. You lose. Good day, sir.
It reminded me of Into Darkness, where like Kirk ends up in the warp core. I thought both areas look a bit similar.
Very true.
Do you think like the characters of like the Delta Shift Starfleet officers were like fleshed out enough?
They kind of reminded me of the characters in Shelbyville in The Simpsons, where there are slight deviations of like the characters we know and love, but sort of like off-brand versions. Because they do what I thought this episode was meant to establish is they're all very similar in terms of disposition. And again, if the show was a little bit smarter, it could have been like, again, Mariner would have been like, oh, I guess I'm not as special as I thought. Or Boimler could say, oh, I'm not the only person in my position, kind of thing, you know? And they sort of like relate to each other, but it's sort of undermined when the Delta Shift's like, we're going to go through this door and not you. Na boo boo.
Yeah, that kind of established him as kind of single-minded, yeah. Although it would be interesting to see an episode later, like an episode entitled Delta Shift, where you just see what they do for like an episode. Because, I mean, they're lower decks too.
Yeah, but sort of, I think I get what you were saying, Vanessa, like they're too much like our regular characters. Yeah. Which sort of reminded me of like, I think there's a Voyage episode, I think it's called like Live Fast and Prosper or something like that, where there's like they're trying to fake that they're like Janeway and the main characters of World Voyager, but they're just aliens, or you know, they're gods. What did you think about did you think the like holodeck sequence was good?
So it's very, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, I thought it was interesting that it was in black and white, because I don't remember the last time I saw a black and white holodeck scene. You know, so it's cool that you can do that in animation. And it is interesting that like that's the way T'Ana and Shax decide to get their kicks with what is quite clearly a scene from Earth where neither of them are from. Unless do they have like old-timey bank robberies on Bajor?
Wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
But it sort of reminded me of the Captain Proton stuff on Voyager.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was very Captain Proton, where it's like black and white, but also Big Goodbye, the sort of like noir detective thing. But
like
instead of them solving crimes, they're committing crimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Crime play.
And do you think like T'Ana should tell other people than just Shax about how she lost her tail?
Yes, I so want to know how she lost her tail. It didn't even occur to me. Honestly, it didn't occur to me until she said that she would have a tail, which is weird because she's a cat. I don't know. Maybe I just thought it was tucked into her pants or something. Which shouldn't have been.
Got like a bobtail.
Oh, okay.
And do you think that might come out in like later episodes?
I really hope so. I was like tendy, you know. I was like, "Ooh, here's an interesting fact I never thought someone would give mention to." You know, like character design. Like I thought it was just an aberration and not just part of the cat, and not anything that it would ever get mentioned. But that would be really cool. I also just like this sort of contrast of like trying to turn to each other and be like caring and present and willing to listen while you have like Tommy guns and you're trying to shoot everybody and rob a bank. Like that's just so it was just very well, like, interestingly conceived, this whole thing. And
Very
like
true.
the fact that they're so, what I don't understand quite is why they're so secretive about it. It's sort of an open secret, everybody knows, you know.
Right.
But I guess like to admit that they know would be to admit that they were in the holodeck while that was happening. So
Well, apparently it is used for mostly that. But yeah, I would like to see the question of Ta'ana's tail answered, like at the same time that we find out what Boimler's hair color actually is, and why does he dye it purple? That's grape colored. He hates grapes.
Maybe
Well, he
he's
hates
a-
raisins, but still.
Maybe he's a fan of Prince or something. Who knows?
Maybe.
maybe it's his one reminder of home. Like I you know, like being back on the farm, just not that it would give him super comfort, but just something that a little bit of nostalgia.
So, how many rank pits out of 5 would you give this episode?
Let's see. I think a solid 3.5. It was funny enough, you know, you like seeing the growth between the characters. I love how at the end, you know, they came together and decided, you know, the lower decks stick together, so they're not going to go for this one room because they thought they had the option of 4. So, you know, they decided to stick together and, you know, keep their friendship going, even if it did blow up on them at the end. But yeah, solid 3.5. Vast improvement from last week.
Like talking about it, it sort of like changed my mind a little bit, and it sort of reminded me of the things that I actually enjoyed in the episode. The sort of spinning their wheels and not headed anywhere with the characters it doesn't bother me as much because there's other things going on, like with the engineers. I thought that was hilarious. It reminded me of my father so much. Like just someone that just the way their brain is solving problems to them is relaxing, just not in a pressurized environment. I thought that was hysterical. I really enjoyed the scene in the holodeck. That was great. Yeah, solid 3.5.
Cool. Yeah, I was wondering, you know, like if you were on the Dove, like which of the methods of relaxation that they talk about and you see and stuff like that would you choose, or would you have like any sort of fun alternative ideas to help you relax or that shit?
The kitten room looked pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would, you know, except their nails, that looked pretty relaxing. The mani-pedi stuff, like that looked pretty relaxing. But it's like, I thought for some reason, because it's, you know, intergalactic and there's a bunch of aliens there, and besides they showed one different thing for the Klingon, like what would relax him, which is like being violent. Like why wouldn't they sort of show a little bit more of a range of services? I don't know.
Actually, come to think of it, I was just thinking as well, like sure, like you see like they've got the Telluride mud baths, but like
Which is
surely,
mine.
like, they would want to. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Surely they would want to like have the Tellurites argue between themselves as well.
Well, that's
So
true. Yeah.
They would get a kick out of it. Everyone's giving it to the.
Tavana said a lot of tastefully and really fun nods to older shows, the relaxation facility and different types of respites, and finally mentioning using deflectors despite it annihilating things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think like, yeah? Sorry, Scott, you were going to say.
Yeah, I would absolutely probably spend a lot of time chilling in the Telluride mud bath. But if it's an option, like I've always wanted to do like a rage room thing. Like I don't have like a lot of rage I have to get out, but to just go in and bust stuff up. So if they're gonna let me go in a room and throw blades at stuff, yeah, I'm all for that. And I will stay within my allotted time.
Well, it seems like that's what the Klingons would do. Right? Something like that.
For them to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks to the panelists for joining this discussion. We hope you, our viewers, have enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe to this video, and we'll see you next time. Check you later.